Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Majara webinar series by HBR Arabia and MIT Technology Review Arabia, and sponsored by Injazat. My name is Solveig Nicholas, your moderator and executive board member of HBR Arabia, and I'm pleased to be your host with such an interesting panel discussing cloud economics of the Middle East. Learn how to accelerate your business with our distinguished panelists, Group Chief Information Officer of G42, Hadi Anwar, Area Vice President for the Middle East and Africa of ServiceNOW, Mark Ackerman, and Senior Vice President of Injazat, Paul Potgeiter. AI, big data, cloud computing, and machine learning are just some of the discussions that are circulating in the boardrooms and strategy meetings of organizations worldwide right now. Long before COVID, organizations were recognizing the effects of 4IR and realizing that organizational survival and long-term success were going to look very different than the current status quo. Technology was and still is disrupting almost every industry in ways that no one predicted. Change was fast and accelerating at a rate never before seen. And then there was COVID, the biggest disruptor, or more accurately, accelerator of the last century. How are organizations supposed to keep up with this ever-changing landscape? By changing their mindsets, by looking at technology as a strategic answer versus the disruptor, by realizing that what were merely tools in the past are the unique opportunities of the future and embracing them in a new way. Today's panel is very exciting to me as I think it will provide tremendous insights into a world that many of us talk about, some implement, but very few really understand and execute strategically. As I mentioned, our panelists today will be discussing cloud economics of the Middle East. Learn how to accelerate your business. Welcome all of you. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks so much, Solveig. Great to be with you guys.
Thank you. It's a very interesting subject, and I want to start, Paul, with you. I'm going to throw it to you. We get a very diverse audience on these webinars, so I want to set just a bit of context of cloud economics. What is it and why should business care?
Well, yeah, it's a good question, I think, for multiple reasons. And firstly, I think just some context around the speakers on the call. It's absolutely fascinating and fantastic to have the backgrounds and the experience that we have available on the call today. And I think that's partly, the reason why cloud is so a critical catalyst to business. And I think when we talk about cloud economics, we must realize that it's not only technology. So, I mean, to set the scene here, I think it's important to just recognize the fact that if we look at the UAE in the Middle East, the digital agenda is truly amplified by cloud. And if you look at the type of clients, clients are, leveraging cloud to really be a business model for them going into the future. So as they start trading into this digital economy, cloud becomes a real catalyst for that. And I think, we'll speak today about, multiple nuances of the good and the bad and the findings on this paradigm. But I think the unique perspective that we'll get today is, Hadi as G42, a native cloud provider, can give us real insight into the CIO perspective around how cloud is shaped at board level. And I think with Mark representing ServiceNOW, ServiceNOW is making and doing significant value by leveraging cloud and changing the way that we optimize and the way we ultimately get the efficiencies of cloud in the industry. So I think this is where also the unique proposition here is that we need to take away the fact that there's partnerships that are involved. And I think the key value here is that Injazat brings these partnerships together. So when I think about cloud economics, I think there's no simple answer. It's really how businesses can capitalize on the benefits that transcend technology, but truly goes into how businesses can gain and scale and get more productive going forward. So I hope that gives you a sense.
It does, absolutely. And to that point, Hadi, I'll throw it over to you based on Mark's comment and say, what is your view of how business is shaping the cloud narrative?
So thank you for, first of all, with that kind introduction, Solveig. This is a very interesting question. In my view, and nearly after 15 years in the cloud revolution, it is clear that there's absolutely tremendous value enabled by adopting cloud. I mean, more than $1 trillion just for Fortune 500 companies. So you can imagine the extent of where we can go with this. And almost all of that value comes from business transformation and optimization, rather than simply cost cutting or IT cost reduction. I personally am extremely fortunate enough because I've been on both sides as a customer and a cloud service provider. So looking back over the years, the CIO story has certainly changed. CIOs no longer own and make IT-led business decisions and build their own empires as they were, famous for. With the adoption of cloud services and the plethora of ready-to-go, off-the-shelf, SaaS-based solutions available, business leaders are now buying their own cloud services and shifting from a centralized IT to a completely decentralized way of working. CIOs need to shift their focus from holding on to that central IT to investing in understanding business well, which is critical for their success, and also to influence executives and leaders through experience on how technology can bring business transformation and help organizations transform to, let's say, smarter ways of working, deliver products and services faster, being cost effective, being more secure, and by doing so, forging relationships and delivering value. I mean, CIOs these days who fail to do so often are overlooked and then phased out. I mean, we have heard throughout the COVID-19 saga that digital transformation initiatives have been accelerated, and CIOs and their teams have been extremely busy over the last 18 months digitalizing business processes. But how does this happen? There's no magic wand to this. Rather, it is coming together of the business leaders and CIOs to enable cloud deployments needed to accelerate the digital strategy of the organization. And lastly, in my view, the biggest benefits accrue to the business from faster time to market, simplified innovation, easier scalability, and reduced risk. I mean, cloud platforms can help deploy new digital customer experiences in days rather than months, and can support analytics that would be uneconomical or simply impossible with traditional technology and platforms. So more companies are starting to see the real benefits of cloud, which has been, as Paul mentioned, a real catalyst for innovation, digital transformation, and thanks to its ability to increase deployment speed and provide unlimited scale. So yeah, I mean, that's how, in my view, the narrative of CIO has changed over the last few years.
Well, maybe Heidi, just a minor addition there. You make it sound easy, but just out of interest, how does a CIO like yourself, which I mean, you represent a cloud native business, how do you work with the business leaders within G42? Because they run the business, they expect you to deliver the value that you just spoken about. But how do you see that relationship?
So I'll give you an example. For example, if my CHRO wants to go for a cloud-based solution, let's say an SAP-based solution, right? I will support her in getting that done. I will ensure that we do that to ensure that all her requirements are met, rather than saying, nope, I'll do an on-prem solution. I'll take the power and I'll deploy that in my environment. So I need to make sure that as a CIO, I'm giving more power to the business to make those decisions for technology around the organization, and it benefits them in the long run, and they'll partner with IT. Furthermore, if we support them in these initiatives, so it makes all the more sense that we have quick deployment, go to cloud, no on-prem infrastructure required, costs are cut, and no skills as such required to build and maintain and operate that infrastructure, which has been, a big problem for all CIOs in the last, decades.
And Heidi, you mentioned delivering value, and I want to throw it to Mark actually, because you at ServiceNOW are known for delivering quality-driven insights, digitization, optimization for cloud operations in complex situations, clients and projects. What do you see as the next horizon or success factors in this space?
Yeah, thanks, Solveig. And further to Heidi's point as well, I think, not just are we seeing this rapid transformation in the cloud as well, but, the economy currently, globally is on its fastest recovery we've seen in 80 years following the pandemic. So, the enterprise digital transformation market is expected to grow, 3 times of GDP in 2021. So it's really becoming that do or die moment And we believe, that up to 75% of organizations today will not exist by 2027 if they don't have that digital transformation as an imperative. So, the technology is really becoming that business enabler. And I think with this momentum, what we're seeing is, and what we are seeing in the research is over 500 million applications will be developed in enterprises by 2023. So talking to Hadi's point around meeting the business requirements, if you think about that massive new request and demand that's going to come on, the traditional silo of IT holding on to all those requirements is going to be something that needs to be something of the past. And the CIO role is really going to be morphed to actually facilitate the automation of that. So ServiceNow is really investing into these innovative solutions around things like managing that technical debt, removing that where possible in the cloud shift or lift and shift strategy, but adding things like observability into a platform, allows us to monitor all the data patterns, understand what data is doing, whether it's from a developer who's in operations or to execs that are trying to ensure that their shopping carts at retailers remain, moving. This is the automation of process that really is going to create the business value. And with that explosion of applications, we're really at the heart of being able to provide a platform view that's agnostic to the various different types of business, and ultimately allow us to serve IT or let IT serve the business. But at the same time, employees and customers can have that great kind of frictionless experience. And ultimately, allowing them to also create applications which form part of the process of quality control, which IT then become the custodian of. So we believe that companies will need these platforms then that can help digitally transform the enterprise. And the success factor for us really is for ServiceNow to become that control tower of all applications, workflows, and data sites across a hybrid cloud architecture.
You mentioned what you're building. Mark, if I could just follow up on what you just said, you mentioned that what you're building is industry or organizationally agnostic, but I'm curious where you're seeing in trends. What are the organizations, if in fact 75% of organizations will not exist, the implication there being that ones that do not adapt and adopt platforms and technologies quick enough, what industries do you see as adapting faster, or more importantly, what industries do you see as lagging in this space?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think, banking and finance certainly has been ones that have had to move really, really quickly. We're seeing a lot of process automation taking place in that environment. Certainly fintech, they've been more agile, and the larger banks have taken more time to transform their business, but they certainly right at the forefront. I would say telecommunications also there. But very surprisingly, we've seen a lot of transformation and digital adoption in the government sector. So we're seeing many customers that are moving to paperless environments, applications for the citizen experience, G2C services, and a lot of investment in that space. So, where traditionally that was a very slow environment, over the pandemic now to zero touch environments, no offices, we've seen government certainly transform very, very quickly.
Great, thank you very much. And Paul, let me throw it back to you. Based on your unique perspective in the market, what sort of trends, be it technology or industry, have you seen in the landscape, and how is that evolving?
Well, I think it ties into Mark's point. Each business today is rethinking how they want to serve their customers. And that client journey is becoming such a pivotal point of how successful businesses really grow, how they expand, and how they adapt in these times where it's really digital first when it comes to business strategy. I think as Injazat, what we see boards and CIOs do, like Hadi, is they engage a partnership ecosystem to truly co-create that value. So, again, I think we all agree, there's no debate that for businesses today to truly scale and to truly be competitive, they're leveraging technology, and often that technology is underpinned by some sort of cloud. And that cloud, it's not only computational cloud, it's really all the intelligence services that come with the concept and the principles of cloud, maybe analytics, data insights, and so on. But, it's that whole remit that provides immense value to a business. So I think as Injazat, where we have seen success is we really, co-create that technology value that will help businesses succeed in this digital area. And partly it's far more than just a technology. It's the combination of also how we look at the commercial construct. And I think if you look at these digital economic models, a lot of businesses are rethinking how they look at risk. They're rethinking how they look at product features. And this is all based, once again, around what our customers and the clients, that journey, how that's shaping that narrative. So, where for me, Injazat's a bit unique is we're obviously leveraging far more partnerships and venture building, where we are being more aggressive around the risk models and the commercial models, the financial models that help our customers to ultimately trade in this digital economy. And I think there's multiple examples there. If you look in the UAE, cloud native is not that it's not a big surprise to businesses. We've got so many different examples of unicorns and cloud native businesses that's just doing so successfully and doing so well. And I think G42 is a great example. I mean, if you look at what they have done with genomics, the impact they've had in COVID, the way that they've truly helped the UAE to recover. And Heidi, and I'm sure the board would say that they would not be able to do that without cloud. Cloud is such a fundamental part of what they do. So, that's I think it's the big trends. I would summarize it as a big focus on the client journey and understanding that cloud is, once again, one of those levers that they can access as a business to truly accelerate not only the business strategy, but more importantly, the dynamics of how you go to market, how you shape products, and ultimately how you scale and how you expand.
And you led beautifully because, Hadi, one of the things, I mean, you are a native cloud supplier. You have, that you're fundamentally already embedded in that world, both as an organization, as the products you provide. But I'm curious if you can indicate for organizations that are not concerned about making the transition. Paul just used the word, co-creation of value in the experience of making that transition. Do you frequently find that organizations wait too long, try to do too much before they arrive? What kind of value can they get from engaging earlier, or should they be engaging earlier with other organizations to try to make that transition?
Absolutely. And I think we are at a stage where the cloud technology is not something new, as Paul mentioned, right? It's been there for nearly a decade now, and it's about time where people start utilizing it and understanding the benefits which it's offering. I mean, companies in every industry can capture substantial value from cloud, but that value isn't distributed evenly, right? There's high-tech industry, there's oil and gas, there's retail, there's fintech, as Mark mentioned. These are the industries which are positioned to generate the most value. And cloud has certainly evolved over the last few years. I mean, organizations all over the world are jumping on the cloud journey and digital transformation agenda. And this is absolutely crucial for many to remain competitive. I mean, if you don't take the leap, you will be left behind. And the benefits of cloud are far-reaching and can be significant. It saves money, it can accelerate delivery and innovation, ultimately speed to market, and a cost-effective operation. I mean, exactly what G42 did last year, as Paul mentioned regarding fighting the battle against COVID-19. If we didn't have that cloud capability inbuilt, we would struggle to go out with our services, the PCR testing which we started, et cetera, to fight that battle for the UAE. So I think that played a fundamental role for us, and others also looking at the benefits as they've started going or made that transition to cloud already.
And Mark, it makes me think, Hadi mentioned this is not a new industry. This is not a new product line, but many organizations still are trying to sort their way through the adoption. So we've got the early adopters and the native group, and then we've got some later adopters. But I'm curious, with all sorts of trends like this, there are frequently sub-level trends, things that are offshoots of this industry that maybe weren't expected or are emerging now. And I'm curious, from your perspective, what might some of those sub-level trends be, and how are they creating greater value for organizations like yourselves and the organizations that you're helping to adopt the cloud platforms?
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I think that it goes without saying, you know, and as Hadi mentioned, the cloud being around for 10 plus years, it's almost becoming a discussion that's, you know, a few years ago, it'd be a debate around whether it's cloud or not. And now it's just an imperative as part of the digital transformation. But what we're seeing, I think, is some of the biggest trends, you know, within this new world is the new world of hybrid work. So I think there's been a lot of discussion around the organizations about who goes back to work and who doesn't. I mean, Hadi and I were just sharing notes on having different offices and making sure the workplace is safe for return. So we are seeing this hybrid work as a big trend now, great value in helping organizations and economies get back to work. So this trend for us, I mean, ServiceNOW in the last 2 years has doubled the features and functionality of the Now platform to manage larger, more complex workflows, and more specifically, this new world of hybrid work. You know, if we look at what we're doing around workplace service delivery, it's around creating that single system of interaction for an employee to go to one place to get all the services in an organization. So that trend is really helping people to work in a safer environment, a lot smoother with multi-channel mobile enabled solutions, right? So they can then automate requests, they can make reservations for seats, schedule cleaning and vaccination, if that may be, right through to navigating offices. So if you look at one of our recent acquisitions, we just made an acquisition called Mapwise, and this is really to help map all of the indoor capabilities for an employee down to reserving seats, space management, and so on. So we're going to consistently invest and continue to double down in this theme that we're seeing, which is that new hybrid way of work, and being able to ensure that, you know, post-pandemic, we are able to help all these organizations to really transform their business to that digital workplace.
Yeah, maybe Mark, if I could just a minor follow-up there, it would be good to get your view on some of the technology challenges, because it seems like, you know, we've spoken about the business narrative where, you know, clients are leveraging cloud technology to be more relevant, to differentiate themselves, and to truly, you know, make the business more efficient, more productive. But we also know from a technology perspective, it's becoming very complex. You know, first of all, just at a very high level, we know that there's no single cloud that can provide everything. So, you know, you have multiple or multi-cloud architectures. And the other big component is our customers ultimately want to share and tap into the best services that are applicable for their business. So what happens is it becomes a very meshed and a very complex technology environment to ultimately manage and operate and ensure that the business continues to get that business value of data insights. Is it something that ServiceNOW is also, you know, not only investing in, but how do you transcend some of those barriers, especially from a technology perspective, when you think about the value of data to a business?
Yeah, Paul, it's a good point. I think Bill McDermott, our CEO, put it best when he said, nobody has to lose in order for us to win. And what he was really meaning by that is there are so many systems of record, as you point out, Paul, in the organization today. And what is happening is we are pointing these employees and customers to so many different systems of record in order to go and get data, interact with data, move process through the organization. And ServiceNOW is really focused on just improving that employee experience, the customer experience, the person working in IT, those various personas, and creating that single system of interaction, that extrapolated layer that is above all of that technology. So Hadi's point as well, you know, there's a lot of technology that's inherent. You've got technical debt. You are making the transition. A multi-cloud strategy is a must for any organization. You can't just pick one. So having the ability to simplify that to the extent where you literally sit down with the CHRO and say, right, we want to create a portal for all of the employees to go to one place, irrespective of what they need to do and the work they need to execute. And that is the simplest term of what the objective should be. Beyond that, it's having those open platforms that can then communicate. And I think that's the key thing for ServiceNOW, is we're continually investing to make sure the platform is open. So we can go and update the systems of record without putting that complexity in the persona of the customer or the client, and making it a lot simpler to move the data around.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? Because that's, again, it talks to not only serving our key customers, but ultimately serving their end customer. Because if we are clearer around the data that matters, that will ultimately be leveraged within the business to make better decisions and shape the business strategy going forward. And I think this is where the answer is not a single dimension. It's not that binary. It's a spectrum of how these businesses are leveraging the combination of the great technologies like ServiceNOW in combination with board leadership, strong technology leadership, amalgamating that with a strong business strategy, but understanding really where those digital opportunities are to accelerate the digital strategy. So you really need to combine that fabric. And I think that's where partnerships, once again, become such a critical factor to actually do that.
Agreed. Yeah. And having those, like I said, those partnerships are necessary to get that end-to-end experience. We've seen a massive improvement on the top and bottom line for customers that are focusing purely on NPS. What's their promoter score with their customers. Improving that can have a massive increase. And what we find is traditionally companies are still looking at customers from a CRM perspective, but not focusing as much, for example, on the middle and back office workflow process. And it's about creating that entire end-to-end experience that will ultimately improve customer satisfaction.
Well, gentlemen, I'm aware of the time. And so what I'd like to ask you to do is each just maybe a last thought or comment that you would like our audience to take away that is critical to think about in your space, so that they can think about and maybe work with one of you in the future as they improve their organizations. Mr. Hadi, I'll let you go first. You're in the order on my screen.
So thank you for that, Solveig. I think we've spoken a lot about the good, but we haven't covered the bad and the ugly of cloud. And I think it'll be important for us to cover that before we conclude this. It's very important to look at the strategy and framework and define that upfront before moving to the cloud. The right migration approach must be considered. Lift and shift, re-platforming, application modernization, they're all important aspects of migrating to the cloud. Trainings, how fast should we move on to the cloud? In my view, and from my experience, we should always take it slow. We should learn as we grow, as we start small, allowing the team to learn and adjust to change, and then ramp up slowly, building confidence, right? It's been said several times, moving to cloud is not just about IT. It is often about a wider business transformation journey. Unfortunately, for many, change is not easily welcomed. So that's also a challenge which we face on an ongoing basis. Testing, not testing enough is also critical in terms of successfully migrating to the cloud. And lastly, reviewing the operating model, the organizational structure, the skills and the talent pool which is required to maintain and operate that infrastructure which we are welcoming and moving towards the cloud. So I think these are very important points which any organization needs to focus on before they plunge or before they take a decision to move on to the cloud. Thank you.
Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Solveig. I think just to reinforce Hadi's point, as you mentioned, the multi-cloud strategy, having the right roadmap and architecture is imperative. That's really important. But we see that the strategy brings a lot of complexity. Many enterprises struggle to manage and orchestrate and automate the kind of multi-cloud environment they'd like to have. So, having these local, the national players, as it were, within the marketplace is really very important for helping customers define that strategy and move it forward. And I think maybe to Paul's point earlier, a lot of what the Injazat and G42s are able to do is to really bring that client proximity, that knowledge, that field level knowledge and regional knowledge, and actually create these type of marketplace portals where they're able to leverage those relationships they have on an international local scale to provide more industry-based solutions. And we're seeing that as well. The industries are demanding that, whether you're talking to telco that are starting to look at how do they create a digital twin through to another organization creating a platform for oil and gas in upstream business. So that type of knowledge is something where ServiceNOW is partnering with the national players as well to really help bring that international flavor and industry solution we have, and localizing that through a player that understands the market, the data sovereignty, and the challenges as well.
And Paul, last but not least.
Yeah, so I do think all great points, and I'm going to try to add by just saying I think the big other component's trust. As we see how the CIOs and CEOs and the clients, the businesses that we're involved in, as we see how they reflect on seizing or sensing and seizing the digital opportunity, it's a matter of really having that trust partner involved to help across a myriad of value chain benefits. And like we said today, it's a combination of technology. It's a combination of being localized and having the ability to truly shorten that value chain. But I do think the other big component is trust. And here it's a total shift to how these businesses are thinking about the business models that are needed to make them relevant and differentiated in the future. And I think this is where, when we talk about trust, it's about how do we risk mitigate the different financial models for these businesses in the future. So you need to combine strong cloud technology, strong technical capability like ServiceNow and other to bring it all together. And if we do that right, people like Hadi, who run big technology businesses and have demanding business owners, will be able to serve them and over exceed on the commitments. Because once again, I think business is really the fundamental outcome that we need to focus on. So it's exciting, and I think it's great to see that CIOs like Hadi is also leading the charge.
Well, thank you all so very much for a very educational and interesting conversation for me. I want to thank Group Chief Information Officer of G42, Hadi Anwar, Area Vice President for the Middle East and Africa of ServiceNow, Mark Ackerman, and Senior Vice President of Injazat, Paul Patgeiter. We had a really interesting conversation today about cloud economics in the Middle East. I hope you will join us for future discussions as we maybe expand on this topic or others. Thanks to our audience for spending the time with us, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.